The third world is not poor. You don't go to poor countries to make money. There are very few poor countries in this world. Most countries are rich. The Philippines are rich. Brazil is rich. Mexico is rich. Chile is rich. Only the people are poor. But there's billions to be made there, to be carved out and be taken. There's been billions for 400 years. The capitalist European and North American powers have carved out and taken the timber, the flax, the hemp, the cocoa, the rum, the tin, the copper, the iron, the rubber, the bauxite, the slaves, and the cheap labor. They have taken out of these countries. These countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited. Countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited. Countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited.
Israeli genocide, imperialist conflicts are man-made. Who cares, cause the rich are getting paid. The Gaza strips on fucking fire. The world only sees what it wants to see. A nation choked up in barbed wire. The only wish is to be free. War in the Middle East. War in the Middle East. The US Army so warfare. There's a war in the Middle East. War in the Middle East. War in the Middle East. The US Army so warfare. There's a war in the Middle East. One death in the West is tragedy. The Middle East is just a start. One death in the West is tragedy. The Middle East is just a start. One death in the West is tragedy. The Middle East is just a start. One death in the West is tragedy. The Middle East is just a start. War in the Middle East. War in the Middle East. The US Army don't want peace. There's a war in the Middle East. War in the Middle East. War in the Middle East. The US Army don't want peace. There's a war in the Middle East.
Countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited.